Happy Tuesday. Thank you. Must be my law class out there. Welcome to our. Well, he can come on up here. Have a seat. Once again, happy Tuesday. I'm Edith Deschelle, Director of the E.W. Scripps School of Journalism, and like to welcome you to our second session during our centennial celebration. We are celebrating 100 years of journalism education. And as I've told the 16 alumni who graciously traveled back to Athens to be on campus with us over the next couple of days, how psyched I am about this poster that's hanging in Schoonover Center, because I looked at all these faces on the poster, and of the 16, I had to fact check again, but all but 3 of them I've had in class. So I feel like it's like reunion time. But I'm a broadcast journalist by training, so I won't be up here long, but I just want to officially open this session to thank Smith and Pat Schooneman for their generosity with providing the leftover donations from the Schooneman Symposium to be able to fund this symposium this year to celebrate our centennial, and to also give a special thank you to Professor Nerissa Young for her tireless spirit and all the details all the I's she dotted and T's she crossed. I didn't know there were so many words with I's and T's in them, but she's been amazing. She's my hero, and I'd like to introduce you to another one of my colleagues, Professor Bill Reeder, who will be moderating this session. So thank you very much, and it's yours.
Thank you, Dr. D.
Yep.
All right. Hi, everybody. Oh, microphone. Sorry. Hey, microphone. My voice carries. You don't need no microphone, but we need it for the web. I know. Yeah. Hi, world. Okay. So, I think the stage is missing something. I think it needs a fern over there and a fern over here. What do you think?
Some aesthetic.
Yeah.
We like aesthetic.
A couple of ferns. Anyway, the title of the panel is Sports, the Ones Who Keep Score. Those who know about Ohio University know that we have some pretty amazing opportunities for students who want to go into sports, especially through WOUB Center for Public Media and their multi-award-winning programs, Gridiron Glory, which focuses on high school sports in the region, and Hardwood Heroes, which focuses on high school basketball in the region, both of which these 2 gentlemen worked on when they were students here. So we have Ethan Sands. Ethan is a 2021 graduate of the School of Journalism. He's now living in the DC area. In Washington, DC, he works on projects for ESPN. Since graduating from OU, he's written articles for the Los Angeles Times, USA Today, and for Major League Baseball's own in-house publications. Eric Threet II graduated from the School of Journalism in 2018. He is a content associate at ESPN, working out of the New York Bureau or Connecticut Bureau? Connecticut Bureau. Originally from Rockville, Maryland. He joined ESPN in fall 2018 and has worked on First Take, the network's weekday talk show. Since August, he's been editing transitions, promos, and other B-roll elements. Other network shows he has contributed to are Get Up, SportsCenter AM, and The Will Kane Show. So can we have a round of applause for our speakers, please? Now to the scripted questions. I tried to go over the questions with him before. He's like, we saw the questions. Efficiency.
We're trying to
Mark
save
of
you
a
some
good
time.
journalist. All right. So what media and or professional organizations were you involved in during your time in the journalism school? I know we talked about Hardwood, but and Gridiron, but can you talk a little bit more about what you did with those? And also you worked with the Post. So can you talk a little bit about that? And if there's anything else you want to talk about, that's cool too.
Yeah, so I spent the last 3 years of my schooling here working with WOUB and getting a lot of experience doing a myriad of different things, from being on air to going out and shooting my own things, going to games, learning how to shoot games, learning how to color correct, learning when something was too blue even though it didn't look too blue, learning how to edit your own things, pitch your own stories and whatnot. You, like in the earlier event that we had, talked about having a lot of opportunities to do things. And that was one thing that I was presented at WOUB, was the ability to do kind of whatever. I had the opportunity to go out to Wheelersburg for some games. I had the opportunity to go up to championship games up in what are they, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and doing things of that nature. So it was really about kind of being tenacious. I think Will said that earlier, and really wanting it. Like, you really don't know what you're doing. We kind of had to figure it out as we go along. Like, I've driven 45 minutes and forgot my SD card, you know. Couldn't do nothing without my SD card. Tough lesson to learn, but damn sure I didn't forget an SD card again. You know what I'm saying? So you really just have to be willing to make mistakes and kind of dive in and understand that nobody really has the answers, and you got to go and get it yourself.
When I was touring Ohio University's campus, I actually went to WOUB as one of my first stops. And I met Allison Hunter, who no longer works at WOUB, but was a main component of me wanting to come to Ohio University, because after touring multiple different schools and getting to acclimated with their programs, it was very clear that you had to wait until you were an upperclassman to get different experiences in different schools. But when I went and talked to Allison Hunter at WOUB, she said, "We want you now. We need you to start working today." And I was still a senior in high school, and it just showed that the opportunities in different places are important, and getting experience from the get-go was something that I needed, and I knew that I wanted to have the success post-graduation. So, and actually I met Eric on that trip when I went to talk to WOUB and found out all about all the interesting things that he was doing, and that just added on to me wanting to join the team. And 4 years later, I get to say I'm an alum of WOUB, and it seems like it paid off a little bit.
Just a little bit. I at least can afford to live and eat and such, so we can work with that.
But we also mentioned that I worked at the Post. As you guys know, the pandemic took shape in 2020, and WOUB took a hit over that summer, and we had to make some transitions, and only a certain amount of people were able to work for them over the summer and stuff like that. So being able to make a transition as a multimedia director for the Post was something that I had to learn from adversity, being able to just jump into a new role with a new company, but also learning a different style of multimedia, a different style of media, because WOUB is a radio and television center, while the Post, as we know, is a newspaper, but also has media elements online, social media and stuff. So being able to learn both, it gave me a leg up on competition when I was graduating.
Cool. Before we move on to the next question, your experiences during the pandemic. So you were a student during the pandemic. You were in the field, right? Can you talk a little bit about what you learned during the pandemic in terms of how to adapt that has carried forward, like the lessons that are the things that you changed out of necessity that are now kind of standard procedure?
I think for me, it was learning what a routine does. The pandemic kind of threw me off my routine, and it threw everything out of whack. Like, I kind of just had time. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't do a great job at keeping a consistent routine. I kind of just did what I wanted to do. I worked out some days, watched some other things some days. I was on the Tiger King with y'all some of the days, we were just living. So I think when I went back to work, so ESPN, I work in television production. So I was back like full time with mask, but they kind of had us wearing bandanas. It was a whole hot mess, but we were all learning, I guess, in the early pandemic. We weren't back in until about June. So when I had to go back to work every day, trying to relearn, I guess, reteach myself how to be productive and keep myself to a particular schedule was tough. And it took probably that whole summer for me to really get back used to going to work and doing things. So I would say having a routine and a schedule, that's what the pandemic taught me. That was my biggest takeaway.
My biggest takeaway from learning in the pandemic had to be communication. Because at the time I was still working with WOUB, I was actually producing Hardwood Heroes. And when the pandemic hit, everybody had to go home. And there were still high school championship games being played. So I had to communicate with Allison and my bosses and producers and say, how are we going to continue the coverage? Who's going to do that? and I was able to step up and do those roles and be able to be a man on the street, as we call it, and be able to learn how to do everything from front to back and get hands-on experience, because I was the only one that could stay or had the title to stay for that production. So, but also being able to communicate with your team and know that because you can't see them in person, there's teams that I hadn't covered that season. So I had to communicate with those team members and get understandings of their players and what they were going through and what their season story was. And learning that was the only way to do that was through communication over the phone or whatever it might have been, because you couldn't see them in person at all.
All right, thanks, fellas. In terms of the classes that you took, which classes do you think were most helpful to you in preparing for your careers? I'm assuming it would be, TV broadcast type courses, but were there any other courses in the curriculum that had great value for you?
Definitely gender, race in class that I had with Dr. D. Being in a class that made you vulnerable, that kind of forced you to look at parts of yourself that you may or may not have known was there, that was probably the first space where I had that opportunity. And especially being Black in journalism, I had to understand that I don't hold the perspective of all Black people. Like I grew up in suburbia, you know what I'm saying? Like my mother tried to shield me from as much as possible to protect me and insulate me with things that she thought was productive for my growth. So I don't necessarily have all of the experiences to speak on everything Black. But a lot of times when we're in mostly white spaces, that's what I'm required to do. Being on the Will Kane show, I was the only person of color on that team. Which one thing I do appreciate about Will, he always asked me my opinion on things. I felt like he appreciated whatever I brought to the table. But there were plenty of times where I felt ill-prepared to speak on multiple perspectives of the Black experience because I didn't experience it myself and I didn't necessarily have what I guess I needed to answer that fully and with context. So being in a class like gender, race in class, I had an opportunity to not only learn about different Black perspectives, but learn about women's perspective, learn about LGBTQIA plus perspectives, and really force me to see the world in a different way. And I carry that with me every day because we really don't know each other as well as we think we do. We only get to see a certain percentage. So being able to be open to what people have experienced or what their perspective is on particular subjects is important. I got that from Dr. D's class. Shout out Dr. D.
I keep shouting out people that don't work here no more, but 2311 ran by Justice Hill was a class that really impacted me, not because of the criteria of the class, which was important and I still take with me today, but because of how he ran the class. If you knew Justice Hill, he did not mind any nonsense.
He a different breed.
Any nonsense. Because if you were to show up a minute late to the class, the door would be closed, the door would be locked, and you would not be able to be allowed into the classroom. And in some cases, that meant you would fail the class because you missed one. And there have been opportunities where I've seen different reporters, not myself because I learned from this class, that would show up to games late or would show up to games or press conferences and the interview would be over because they didn't manage their time well enough to show up on time. And learning that was vital to me because it instilled in me the purpose of timeliness and being detail oriented for something that you signed up to do, and you have to do your job because you all are paying to be in classes. Why not make the effort to show up and be on time and be tentative to everything that you have going on, because you never know how those classes are going to impact you in the future, even if it's something as small as showing up to class on time.
Can you talk about your internships, the internships that you did while you were a student and what you took away from them?
Let's see. My first internship was an unpaid internship at 10 TV. Shout out Papa Hall, he's sitting in the audience. I was able to stay up with my Ohio family who knows where I would have been staying if it wasn't for y'all. So, I love you and I appreciate you for that. Definitely would have been sleeping outside of a Waffle House somewhere. Love me some Waffle House. That was my first internship. I was able to do that in 2016. I was able to get an internship with WJLA in DC going into my senior year of college, and I also worked on at a basketball league doing social media for Maryland Elite. So I was able to get a bunch of different experiences. Tapping into to social media and seeing how to grow a brand became important, and adding to the multimedia that you were talking about, and having that skill set and understanding how to connect with certain audiences was important. Being able to be out in the field and watch how reporters interacted with everyone around, whether it was the person who was the subject of a particular story, or trying to talk with people to get certain angles, and just being nice and friendly. You didn't see all of that with every reporter, obviously. Some of them are asses. It is what it is. But seeing how to do it the right way, and seeing how just little things, how far they go, whether it's saying, hi, how you doing? Whether it's saying, excuse me, whether it's picking something up for somebody, and really treating people right. Like they don't have to give you their time. They don't owe you anything. So being able to see it at the professional level, how people maneuver about that and treat people was cool to see at those internships too.
I think they have me on this panel because I can plug all the programs, because I did almost everything you could have over here. In my sophomore year, I did the Scripps in DC program, where you take a trip back to DC, where I'm from. So it's basically just a trip home for me. But I got to experience my first internship as a sophomore in my spring semester, while also getting course credit for the classes that I took with professors like Hans Meyer and others, while meeting different people and electives of executives in DC, which was a great experience. But I worked at a podcast studio in DC, and it actually turns out that that's the place where I work now, because my internship gave me the experience, but also gave me the rapport to be able to come back and say, hey, I need a full-time job. And they'd be like, well, we know you can work, so let's bring you on. That was my first internship. And then when the pandemic hit, I just got inducted into the Sports Journalism Institution and going into my junior year. So that internship got pushed to the fall. It was supposed to be a summer, but I worked with the Tallahassee Democrat, and that was my first time ever writing into a publication. And that's also how it got me into writing with the Post. So just different internship experiences that influenced where I am today and my growth while I was still in school.
Good. Tell us about your journey to the job you have now, what stops you took along the way to get there.
So I graduated in May of 2018. I went back to Maryland, where I'm from, and worked at Clyde's. I don't know if y'all have ever been to Clyde's. There's a little chain around the way. But I was a host there for 3 months. I ended up going to NABJ in August, the National Association of Black Journalists Convention. It was in Detroit this particular year. This would have been my third year going, so I had already made a couple of connections throughout the years. My first time going, I had met a guy named Demetrius Harris, who works over in LA at ESPN, and I met a lady named Jelaine Edwards, who worked at the SEC network at the time. And they were my first kind of like people who I had on the inside. Like, so they were really important to insulating, I guess, and making sure that I was set up when the time came for me to go get a job, that I was ready. So being able to network throughout your time here, you don't ever know how those people are going to help you in the future going forward. Because when I came in 2018, Jelaine had connected me with one person who worked at the ESPN booth at the convention, who put me in contact with one of the recruiters there, and then the recruiter led to an interview, and then the interview led to me getting flown out the next week on my birthday. It was a great birthday present. And I ended up getting the job like day of. It was like, it was a dream come true. Like, I probably could have cried. I probably should have cried. Healthy show of emotion. I don't feel like I cry enough. Maybe that's just me. But it happened very quickly. Like it was a blessing for real. But it came from networking and being consistent in my work and with connecting with them and keeping up with them.
So, like I said, I worked at WUB and the Post while I was here. And my first job out of college in 2021 was actually an internship. I interned with the Los Angeles Times, and as a fresh baby-faced 21-year-old, they flew me out to LA and said, get to work with an idea that I knew exactly what I was doing because of the work that I got here. And it wasn't, I found this out later. I didn't get the job because of my writing abilities, because it wasn't that great. But I got the job because of how I would market the writing abilities and how I would put my stuff on social media and create different ways to create viewership. So using the social media, using the multimedia, using my writing or lack thereof abilities at the time to create a stream of different ways to create viewership for the Los Angeles Times. That then transferred me to, when that internship ended, I went and got a full-time job with the USA Today Sports Network in Grambling, Louisiana, covering Grambling State, Louisiana Tech, and high school sports. And if you guys have ever been to Louisiana or Texas, high school football is like professional football because the kids are ginormous and all this other stuff. That job turned into another job when I was covering the Louisiana Tech's baseball team. Major League Baseball saw the work that I had been doing, and I had already interviewed with them during the National Association of Black Journalists convention in 2021 and said, this is good work. You should come write for us. So instead, I went and worked for Major League Baseball, covering the Atlanta Braves the year after they had just won the World Series. I know, sad, I didn't get to cover the World Series, but that internship actually pushed me a little higher onto the scale, and I got done with that internship with Major League Baseball, and I, as one does, needs another full-time job. And I called my old boss at the intern place that I said I was working at Pieville Media, and I said, I need a full-time job. What projects are you guys working on? And he said, well, we just got this new project for ESPN. I said, sign me up. And here we are today. So yes, in the almost 2 years since I've graduated college, I've lived in Los Angeles, Louisiana, Atlanta, and now my hometown of Maryland. So follow your dreams, but don't be afraid to up and move when the opportunity presents itself.
And at the end of the day, people really just want to have fun and enjoy themselves. Like, people want to work with people who they enjoy. So if people like you and you do good work, that'll make your life much, much easier when it comes to applying for jobs. You made that network. They know that you good people. You know that you do good work. You good money.
So along the same lines of looking for a job. So if you could go back in time, not to the spring of your senior year, because then the game is on, right? But the spring, this time in your junior year, you still have a whole year of classes coming up. You've probably got an internship lined up for the summer. If you could go back, what would you change about how you were preparing for the job market?
COVID. I mean, that's honestly like the biggest thing for me. Was like I was getting ready for probably the biggest internship in my life, about to go fly to Arizona to be a part of the Sports Journalism Institute, and falls in my lap. The pandemic shuts everything down. But I think that's also a learning thing, being able to adapt to any situation, any adversity, and keep moving forward. And like I said, with WUB having to shut down for a little bit, I had to figure something out. And I got an email saying that the Post was hiring a new multimedia director, and I immediately applied because you need to have content on your reel, on your resume, saying you're doing something, even if it's over the summer. And that was the opportunity that I got. So it was a free for all. Especially because the COVID market now is still not the best, but it's a free for all to just understand that you are going up against people who are just coming out of college, people who are searching for jobs, and you have to continue to build your rapport in different parts of your game. Like your skills are is super important to make sure that people understand that you can do more than just one thing. And being versatile and indispensable is something that I really prided myself on when I was working, just to make sure I had producer, writer, editor, on air, behind the scenes. Everything, every one of those boxes was checked off so that when I did apply, they said, oh, these are the responsibilities of this job. Well, I have real world experience doing that because of my time here at the EW Script School.
I think for me it would also be versatility. Like I'm trying to, so when I was a junior, I was doing mostly broadcast stuff. I had just come off of hosting Hardware Heroes. I was in a position of leadership for the first time, so I had more responsibilities than what I was used to. So I think for me, I would have put more time into me. I don't think that I did a good job at balancing. I was really trying to make sure I was there for everybody and doing what I needed to do to create a good show, a positive environment, and things of that nature. I would have done more things like writing a little more, trying to add versatility to what I had. I don't think I wrote at all for real my junior year. I was doing mostly Hardwood, Gridiron, Newswatch. Shout out Newswatch. I think that putting time into yourself and finding that balance for what you need to grow is important, and it's tough to find that line because you really don't know until you're in it and you see how much you give to yourself versus how much you give to others, and you see what skills you may be lacking or see where you got complacent or you got stagnant with certain things or you got content with the skills that you had because you were solid or you were good. So I definitely would have taken a step back and looked at where I was at. I still was unemployed. I wasn't making no money. You know what I'm saying? I still hadn't achieved as like the pinnacle. I hadn't gone through the process yet. So just making sure that I had that balance, I feel like would have been something that would have changed.
I think what you said is really important. It's like you didn't know who you were competing against because you thought you were great here, and you were. Like I remember when I was a sophomore when you were a senior, about to graduate, and I remember thinking, how did I not know this guy's from my hometown and he's the top dog on this campus? Like, and doing all of this stuff
Top
that I
dog's
wanted.
a stretch, but
You know
appreciate it.
what? But doing everything that I had wanted to be doing, hosting a TV show, being able to be like everybody can count on Eric to do whatever it took. And then he didn't feel like he was doing enough because he was competing against people from not only Ohio University that are going into the job market, but people from Syracuse, Mizzou, all these other great journalism schools. And I think it's really important to remember that when you're getting ready to graduate your junior year, you realize that your skills could be great for where you are, but it's not only where you are that you're competing with. You got to go up against people that you don't even know yet. And just keep growing. There's no timetable on being able to stop learning and growing and getting better because there's so much you can learn. And I'm still learning. I think we all are.
I'm 26 and I feel like I know minimal. Like I feel like I've done good and I'm just always progressing, but I really don't know nothing about nothing. I've only been at one company. I don't know what the rest of the world has to offer. I don't know what it's like to travel for work and do things like that, you know? So we're always growing, and as long as your mind is open to understanding that you're not perfect and you're going to make mistakes and accepting mistakes and wanting to make mistakes, I think that's really what it comes down to, wanting to do better. You have to make mistakes. You kind of just got to do. So being, I don't know what my train of thought was there. I lost it, but yeah.
Sorry. When you double your age, it'll speak exactly the same.
Man.
Guarantee it. So I'm going to have a few more questions here, but if you have questions for these guys, start lining up at the queue, please. There's a microphone here in the middle aisle. So if you could stand up and get ready to ask the questions, and then we'll take them first come, first served. All righty. So what's the best part of your job right now? Start with Ethan.
I think the best part for me is just being able to interact with different people from all walks of life. Like, I'm currently working on a series for ESPN that's gonna air in June for the 50th anniversary of hip hop called Rap Stories, and I've gotten to travel from New York to Atlanta to DC to Baltimore to interview and help produce interviewing different rap artists and stars, and it's like you get to meet all these people and you realize everybody's just people and they're just trying to live their life. But yeah, just being able to travel and have conversations and make connections and network with these people, because like I said before, networking is the biggest thing that you can do whenever you go. It's not, you don't necessarily need to have a business card or whatever, but just showing face, being nice, and giving a smile can go a long way in the long run.
You really do. I think for me, it's probably the same thing. Like I love my team. Like the people who I work with on First Take, Stephen A. did a really good job at creating a diverse set of people who I get to interact with on a day to day, and in a creative space that is so important to make sure that, again, those perspectives are covered. So being a part of people who are not only really good at their job and see storytelling and see editing, see ideas and whatnot in a different way is something that is invaluable and that a lot of shows, even at ESPN, don't have. So being a part of a team that's great and fun to be around, it also pushes me to be better, is definitely my favorite part about my job.
We have a question. We have a question from Dr. DeShiel.
Thank you. Thank you to my kids. Eric, I just want to follow up on a statement you made. You said during your junior year, you were busy working in these different student media capacities, and you said you did not have time to write. Explain what you mean by write.
So that could mean a couple of things. Recently, I just started doing like free thought writing just to try and get myself back into it, just to see, like I'm learning that I have ADHD and my brain be all over the damn place. So I'm trying to figure out how to properly, I guess, express those thoughts. And that has been one way of me writing and even trying to add certain dependent, independent clauses, making sure that my sentences got a little pop to a little flavor. That was one way. But another way that I ended up doing the summer going into the summer after I graduated was working with Fansided. I did some writing about the Wizards and the pain that they regularly cause me. I felt like that skill set was missing, so I was looking for just different entities where I could write for them and have a byline and things of that nature. And Fansided was one for me that ended up working out, where I could talk about something that I was passionate about, that I was knowledgeable about, and was able to get the experience that I needed, being able to have some deadlines and drop things after games and things of that nature.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.
All right, I have one last question for y'all. The question is written as, what advice do you have for today's students? And I think you've given a lot of really good advice for them on what they should do. So I'm going to flip it around. What should they not be doing right now?
I'm gonna let you go first.
And don't lecture on the, lifestyle stuff. I'm talking about in school.
That's an important distinction, because OU definitely creates an environment where things can go awry.
So I'm gonna answer both parts of the question. So the first part being what you should do is believe in yourself, believe in your dreams, because not only did I hear a whole lot when I was getting ready to graduate or getting ready to go to my senior year was, you can't start there, that market's too high. You can't do this because they don't know who you are yet. That's great. That's all fine and dandy. But what some people might experience is not what you will experience. You are able to reach to as far as you want to, as far as your mind will take you. But if you limit yourself, that's when your goals and your dreams just start to deteriorate, because you can only go as far as you want to. What you shouldn't do is, again, limit yourself, because when you are experiencing life, when you're experiencing college and all that, all the good things that come with it, there are also bad things. But don't just do one thing. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. You can be good at something and still be good at other things. But until you are great at one thing, there is so much more that you can do to enhance your abilities and your skills for where you are and where you want to be. Because again, you can only go as far as you let yourself, and that's work and mindset.
So you're piggybacking off of what you said with kind of trying everything. You definitely should try as much as you can. Like, you have nothing to lose, for real, especially in college. Like, I'm trying new things as a grown person that I wish, like, I took the opportunity to try out when I was here. And there's so much to do just within the journalism space. And then when you get into a company that has marketing teams and then has diversity and inclusion teams and have different entities in that company, you just always be curious. Never feel as though, like, I feel like I'm always learning. I feel like I don't know nothing about nothing. It's crazy because I have prepared and I've done the work, but I still feel like there's so much to do, and it's very exciting. But the way that you get involved with doing that is by just doing things and not being not thinking too much about what the outcome is, and understanding that you're, regardless of whether or not you accomplish the goal that you had, you learn something with that experience. You can apply it to something. What you shouldn't do.
Again, not lifestyle, professional.
I'm gonna get there. Just I would say you don't pigeonhole yourself in. I guess it kind of goes with the try everything thing. I don't know. That's tough because I feel like saying what you shouldn't do in terms of trying to grow in a space is like, I mean, I feel like we could accomplish that with saying what we should do. That's tough. I'm gonna roll with Ethan's answer and limiting yourself, even though it's kind of the same thing as trying everything. It's all in the same, vein.
The last point that I'm gonna make on this topic is there are so many resources at Ohio University and here, period, that you can use and take the best of. Because when you get into the real world, it's you and the resources that you've made and the networking and connections that you've created while you're here. There are so many people that you can talk to, communicate with, and get in touch with that can help you along that journey. And then there's also just equipment and stuff that you can do. There's a podcast studio that I think was just being built when I was leaving. Like, there's so much stuff here that you can use to create your own stuff. And it doesn't have to be a part of the student-run stuff as much as we would love you to be a part of them. There are TikTok, as somebody mentioned in the last discussion. You have so many different ways to create a own lane for yourself that it comes back to what I was saying earlier. Don't limit yourself.
It's very easy to hear how people speak on the industry and thinking that you have to do a particular thing. You can really do whatever you want. And the way to find what you really want to do, you just got to do things.
So one last question. Oh, we have a question at the mic. Could you please give us your full name before you ask the question?
Yeah, my name's Paul Nern. Thank you too for being here. My question's mainly about the day-to-day happenings at both of your jobs, and I'd like to hear just a little bit about what goes on every day, and then if there's enough time as a part 2 for the day-to-day answer, I'd like to know what the funniest thing that has happened to each of you at your jobs is, a nice anecdotal story.
Gotcha. Thanks for the question, Paul. Day to day. So I get to work at about 7:30 a.m. I work Monday through Friday, thankfully. It's in journalism, you not gonna have that luxury. My job before I didn't have consistent off days, and I worked at 4 a.m. It was very ghetto, an ungodly hour to be awake. I hadn't thought about that in so long. It's a luxury to have a weekend, so take advantage of it while you got it. Wake up about 7:30, we have a show meeting. With First Take, it's different than any other show group. We kind of just throw out segments like, hey, so Stephen A., what you think about this? Smiley, what you think about this? And that's kind of the meeting. Like if they want to talk about it, or if they have, First Take builds their segments based on differing opinions. They are a debate show. That is what they are, the foundation. They aren't trying to be newsy necessarily. They are trying to create conversation. So whatever topics in the morning get the people going, get people fired up, that's typically how it's laid out. So the show meeting probably goes from like 7:30 to 8:10, 8:15-ish. And then we're in the newsroom cutting the clips that they want. And based on a particular day, it'll be like earlier this week, we were cutting the Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, the You Can't See Me. We were cutting all of that. I had to do an NBA playoff promo at the same time preparing for today's show. And I like it really just depends on what the day-to-day is and what they ask of you. But we get in, we cut things, we try and make the show look great, try and enhance what Stephen A. and Jay Will and Perk and all of them are talking about. And we try and make sure that they look good, so we look good. Our bonuses look good in December.
So, like I said, I've been working on a different program for ESPN called Rap Stories, but because we just wrapped up production, days look very different than they did a couple of weeks ago. So I'm gonna go back in time for a little bit and talk about what it was and when we were recording with everybody. So basically, I get to work. I live in Baltimore. I work in DC. If y'all don't know that, the commute is crazy. So I have to commute to work every day, and then I work from 9 to 5. And like Eric said, we get weekends, thankfully. Will you still have to sometimes work on the weekends? Yes. So basically, I wake up, I go to work, and I go through my email and see what clientele has emailed me back and talked about, because if you've ever worked with artists or rappers, communication is lackluster. So whenever you get something from somebody, you respond right away, because you don't know if you're gonna hear back from them for a week, a month, whatever it might be. And then if we have a recording set up for that day, I'll either have to take a bus, train, whatever, to where we gotta go to the location, set up the studio, get the client updated with what we're doing, with what the script is looking like, and then get them comfortable enough to talk to somebody that they've never met before. And then after that, we go back, take the SD card that we didn't forget, and run it back to the post-production and cut it up and make sure that the hour-long whatever interview looks good, sounds good, and get everything ready for post-production on the back end, which is marketing and stuff like that. So that's a full day, but there's still more that's done throughout the day, I guess, if you want to put it that way.
You said the funniest thing that I had seen, it was Randy Scott's birthday. And they had, this was when I was working on SportsCenter, they all had us go to the studio and they were giving out some cupcakes. Cupcakes were solid. I was proud of them because typically their cupcakes, it's a little questionable, I ain't gonna hold you. But we were going up there and we were still kind of pandemic right now, so it was still a little weird, but Storm, I didn't know what to do. Like, I really want to like run over and pick her up and everything, but she like full so fucked up. I was like, I hate it. But it was, thinking about it after, that was easily the funniest experience that I had at ESPN. I didn't know how I was going to react in that moment. I want to do better. Like, please help your people when they fall. I know that we clapping when people drop plates and whatnot here. Just think about it in the long run, how you want to treat in that moment. I definitely regret not helping and but that was easy for us.
I think my favorite moment since I graduated, probably my funniest moment, is when I worked for Major League Baseball covering the Braves. I remember doing an interview with Ronald Acuna Jr., and it was everybody from Marcelo Zuna to Ozzy Albies to Eddie Rosario.
That's a fun group.
That's a group. Literally, like, going through and just messing up his interview from front to start. Like, it was putting cups on his hat. It was putting multiple hats on his hat. It was. I think they poured water on him at one point. It was literally like the most unproductive interview I've ever had, but it was also hilarious just to see how they interacted and like are a team that either doesn't care while they're not playing, but it's so locked in when they are playing. And it was definitely a moment.
Was that a written story or a video story?
Thankfully, it was a written story.
I was about to say, there's no way you were able to put a package together with that.
No.
We have another question.
Hi there. My name's Kate Williams. Kind of going off you guys talking about, journalism isn't the typical 9-to-5 job, especially as a young journalist. So how do you guys deal with those feelings of sometimes being really burnt out and maybe kind of feeling like you're lacking a little bit of a passion for whatever you're working on at the time?
So, you want to go first?
Oh, you got it. You already, go ahead. You jumped the gun. It's all good.
Honestly, if you're lacking passion for what you're doing, it's probably not where you're meant to be at the moment. Because sure, you can come to work and be miserable every day and feel burnt out, but I remember there were stretches where I would go 2 weeks without a day off because the Major League Baseball season, it was home schedule, and you are at the stadium from 12 to 2 a.m. at some points, and then gotta be right back at there at the next day. But I loved every minute of it, and it's enjoying what you're doing makes it more bearable. And sometimes you do have to feel burnt out a little bit, but you take a break. You have to know what your limits are and be able to put boundaries up, because if you don't, some employers will take advantage of that, and some people will say, hey, you're burnt out, take a day off. But that's not usually the case. As a young journalist, you want to feel like you can keep rolling with the people that are doing it for a long time. And you also have to realize, like, if you're a young journalist in that field, you're just getting started. So you don't want to feel burnt out too early and be like, I can't keep going. But there will be people that can keep going. So you have to know your limits.
And it's also important to distinguish what burnout looks like versus kind of just what a tough day looks like. When you look at your big picture plan and what you're looking to do and what you need to do to achieve that, if that's a part of your mission, if that's a skill that you need to be on this deadline driven, and the deadlines are stressing you and it's a little uncomfy for you at the time, and it's something that you just have to go through to grow. But if the love itself is lost, like if you in a funk for like a few weeks, you really might have to like look at what you're doing and be like, okay, so maybe I like this element of what I'm doing, but I really don't appreciate what we got going on here. I don't like that my schedule is being run by other people. I want to have more free time. I want to do what I want to do on my own time. I want to have more creative opportunities. I don't want my life to be dictated by news or whatever the case is. You just have to take a step back and see the big picture for what you want to do. And if you're working toward that, then keep doing what you're doing. But it's never too late to pivot for real, especially in college. If you really don't feel like what you're doing is fulfilling to you and you've given it a go, even if you want to come back to it, it's not going nowhere. Like, you can feel free to try new things and just come back, but it's really just make sure you have your big goal is, if you're working toward that, then you get money.
I'm gonna give you two more things for that. First, to pick back off what you just said. If you, the love has got to be there. The love has got to be there for what you're doing, because if you're not feeling like you're being productive or anything, then you're not going to put your best foot forward either. Also, if you want to take a step away from what you're doing, the experience that you have is not going anywhere. Your resume is still going to look the same. You don't have to take it off your resume just because you want to step away. You can always be there. And two, it's just being able to understand what you want to do at the end of the day. And you have to be able to push yourself. And that's what I meant earlier when I was saying, talk about dreams. If you want to do something, it doesn't matter if you're in a small role or a big role or whatever, you're ultimately moving towards what you want to be doing. And sleep, you have to sleep. I don't know, like some people be like, have all-nighters all the time. I never pulled an all-nighter when I might have slept in the newsroom, but I was sleeping at some point. And you have to, like, we have two very different sleep schedules, but you have to figure out what works for you.
Your body will shut you down at some point. You're going to need a day.
If burnout don't, your body will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Thank
there's
you,
a difference
guys.
between being worn out, which is you're tired, burnout. Burnout is when you cannot remember having a good day at work. It's so far in the past you can't remember it, and you have no hope for a good day coming up. All right, we have one last question.
Hi, I'm Grace Isley. Is there a skill or lesson that you learned at Ohio University that you take with you every day through your career?
The first one that came to mind was, again, just being open. Like, you are in a place where you are working on your foundation and really figuring out what you are trying to do. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that is not even, I don't even know if that's a skill, but it's weird because you don't like it. Like, it doesn't feel comfy. Like, it's just not something that you're used to doing, but you gotta push yourself. It's just like, I have a lot of respect for runners for that reason, because ain't no way anyone just enjoys running. I wholeheartedly, there's no way. Like, I don't believe it. But like, it's all mental. When you start going, you flowing, you just go. And that's kind of how you have to be when you're going throughout, especially something like journalism, where you have breaking news situations that are different. You have feature situations that are different. You just have your daily news cycles, which are different. There's a lot of different ways that your skills are going to be tested, and a lot of different ways that you're going to have to learn the hard way that something that you did wasn't correct. And you just have to be comfortable that that's the process that you're going to have to go through.
Managing adversity, because the breaking news stories are adversity. You don't know when they're going to pop up, and they just pop up and you got to deal with it. But just being able to put yourself in different situations that you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And adversity is going to strike all the time, whether you're in school, whether you're in the field, whatever it may be. Something is going to pop up that's not going to be going the way that you want it to be. And if you are not able to weather that storm, you're going to be worse off than if you were able to just stick it through and figure out a way to find a solution. And sometimes it's not as easy as just finding a solution. You got to work around it and all this other stuff. But learning here and with real world experiences how adversity can work in different ways in different entities, it made it so much easier for me to look calm under pressure when you're in the real world. I feel like my bosses have said it to me on numerous occasions. They're like, let's just let Ethan do it because he's not going to look like it's bothering him. When on the inside, I'm freaking out because I don't know what we're going to do. But if you are able to have composure in situations where people would not, that shows a lot about your character and being able to just keep moving forward.
You know, you guys both mentioned getting out of your comfort zone. How do you do that, though? I mean, the number one concern I face with students today is their anxiety prevents them from getting through. They know what they want to do. They have their dreams. They have their goals. They're curious. They've done their homework. But it's that step of calling that person, walking up to that person, getting in the car and driving an hour.
We were having this conversation earlier, because it's like, so I think about the first time I was on television for Gridiron. It went so terribly. It was very bad. The clip still exists on the internet. Don't ask me. I will not help you find it. I just remember going into like the second time I was going to be on TV and how scared I was. Like, my team didn't give up on me. I had a lot of support from WUB and from my team that I had. Blaine Carrick was my lead reporter. It was a good time. She made sure that I was in good shape for the next time that I went on, and I made it through. It didn't look as comfy. I felt like my face was real rigid still when I went up, but it was growth. It was a step in the right direction. But having people, having a support system, having a network of people who won't let you fail. Like, it really do take a village, and you shouldn't be afraid to lean on your people. That's what they're there for. Like, when you find your people who really want you to win and don't mind you saying, nah, I can't go out today, I gotta do some things, and they're gonna still be there for you the next day. Having them to lean on, and even just being comfortable with opening up about your anxieties and such, is very important. And being able to understand that you have to make those mistakes and you have to go through it, so you know how you feel, you know where your head was at, you know what you want to improve on, you remember how terribly you may feel, and you don't want that to happen again. So it's just getting back on the horse, and it's tough. But I would say
There's nothing
leaving-
wrong with failure. Everybody
No.
does it.
Everybody does it. And the more you open up about that and are comfortable with that and understanding if people are going to judge you and judge what you want to do, if your dreams are too big for what they have in mind for you, it really don't matter. Like, you're going to have people around you that are going to build with you and are going to support you and be there for you. So lean on them. That would be something.
That's one of the biggest things, because people have friends in college, like I was saying it earlier. There have been people that I graduated with that dropped off the face of the earth after we graduated. I haven't heard from, seen from, or whatever. But if you have a core group that you know you can trust in, it makes all the world of difference. It can be 2, 3 people. It can be one person. It doesn't have to be a whole lot of people. But if you know you have some people to confide in, it's a whole different. But another thing, me and Eric have been talking about all the on-air stuff that we did when we were in school. We not on air no more. We're not at the moment. And being able to throw yourself in new opportunities is what we've also been talking about. I got asked to produce Hardwood because nobody else signed up. And that's how I got my first set being a producer. Eric said, that's the job that's open right now at a good space that I like working with good people. And that's just the opportunity that came. And we've been talking about that the whole time. Opportunity presents itself in a place that you enjoy doing what you want to be doing. It doesn't necessarily have to be the job that you want or the role that you want, because I know we both want to be on air again at some point. But where we are right now, we're making the most of it and we're enjoying it.
No, for real. And it, again, being in this space when you have less responsibilities, like once adulting starts to happen, being a young adult, again, is very ghetto. It's nobody really prepares you for being like, damn, I got $20 till Thursday. How did this happen? You know what I'm saying? So when all those problems start to compile, aside from work and your growth and things like that, having that foundation and having your group, your rock, you know what I'm saying, having your people around you will make all of that easier once things start compounding.